Thank you.
Moving on, Corinne Hutton. Corinne is a core, I think she likes to be called, is the founder of Finding Your Feet. In June 2013, Cor nearly lost her life after suffering acute pneumonia and sepsis. Surgeons were forced to amputate both her hands and her feet below the knee. But Cor has not let that stop her. After fighting her way back to health, she went on to start up the amazing charity Finding Your Feet, so that she could support families affected by amputation and limb difference and show them that there is life after limb loss. She wants them to be the best that they can be. She's also gone on to break 4 world records, has countless awards, and so many achievements, the list is far too long to go into today. And she has now had her double hand transplant after waiting more than 5 years. During Cor was given, during COVID, I believe that Cor was given a royal surprise as she found herself on a video call with Prince William. She was left gobsmacked after the Duke of Cambridge spoke to her about how Finding Your Feet is supporting people amid the coronavirus lockdown. Ladies and gentlemen, Corinne Hutton.
I need to unmute myself there. Oh, that was difficult. Challenging, right enough. The topics for challenge have just been tested there. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Angela, for that introduction. Shucks, how embarrassing. All absolutely true, though. Thank you. And thank you, Tom. I scribbled down so many points during your talk there that I don't think I can read more in writing. So the legacy of hand transplants is that they do work. But I can't read my writing, so I've come back as a doctor. Who'd have thought? And I just want to say a quick thank you to Andy for his support during the week and helping me get set up. And let's have a go at screen sharing then, shall we? And while we're talking about challenges, then we can remember how far we've come during lockdown here, can't we? And all these different things that we never used to be able to do, suddenly we can screen share. And we can do Zoom calls and things, all new. Here we are. Now, hopefully, you can see that picture ahead, can you? Great. So, Angela, just to answer your point there, Corinne, that one of these names that people get wrong all the time, spell wrong, say wrong. All my life, I've been through that. So, Finding Your Feet decided it was easier just to be Cor, and so I changed my name to be Cor on my little video box there, and the very first slide of my presentation says Corinne. So how's that for confusion? I don't really care. If you call me what you like.
You're a good company, Cor. You're a good company. Confusion's there too.
Yes, I'm quite good at that confusion. I'm about to confuse you all, so give me half an hour. We'll see where we are from there. So yes, Angela, thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, my story, I suppose, for the purposes of this, is going back to 2013. Where I had a bad cough that wasn't any different from any I'd had before or anyone I knew had had. I got the lozenges, I got the cough syrups and things, it didn't go away. And after 2 weeks, got myself to the doctor, who agreed at that point I had a chest infection and gave me a set of antibiotics. And the very next day, found myself dying in hospital. That's all a bit blunt, but I've got limited time here to tell you all my story. So that's pretty much the introduction to that story. And I'm not very good at taking that part terribly serious now with hindsight and a few years gone. It's probably quite shocking to you watching, but it's just my life and it's just what happened, and I try not to dwell on it terribly much, but it is my job, I suppose, to talk about it and to raise awareness for other amputees and things. So I am very used to talking about it as well. But the cough had mixed with Streptococcus A, which, as I understand, is in us all, and had led to sepsis in my case. And again, don't like being dramatic, but just to try and let you understand what my world was like at that point, my family had signed the organ donation register for me and had agreed to donate my organs to anyone that would need it. And this all happened overnight. And this is the problem with sepsis. I spent a lot of time trying to raise awareness of sepsis over the years. Managed to bully the Scottish Government enough to do a massive campaign every year for 4 years, which stopped only because of COVID, obviously having a bit more emphasis. But the problem with sepsis is that, yes, obviously it's a killer illness that you'll have heard of. There are lots of killer illnesses out there that are serious, obviously, nasty, and I'm sure a lot of people have been affected by cancers and different things like that. So not to take away from the seriousness of those illnesses, the problem with sepsis is it happens so quickly. You don't get the chance to plan recovery, to plan treatments, to attend clinics and meet with surgeons. You go in there and it can be so quick, in my case, overnight, and you're either dead or you're not overnight. And obviously that was the case with me. In that one overnight in Paisley RH, I was given a 5% chance of life, and everybody had come to say bye-bye. Ridiculous. Again, to try and get the effect to you, I have to sound dramatic, and I don't like being that, but my mum and dad were on holiday in Devon, and they had to belt it back. My brother's in Dubai, he's a lawyer in Dubai, and he had to go on a plane with his black suit. Just bonkers when, 2 weeks before, well, the day before I was okay, except for this chest infection. It's just ridiculous. But I spent 3 weeks in an unconscious state where they were trying to save my life. I was actually flown down to Leicester Hospital where they put me on an ECMO machine, which basically functioned all my organs at that point. It sent oxygenated blood into my system, pumped my heart, made my heart pump that oxygen into my lungs, made my lungs pump the oxygen. I don't know, it's the other way around. Sorry if you're medical and I've got it wrong. But basically every single organ was worked by a machine. And my mum has told me quite a few times that at that point she was praying for any part of me just to live. It didn't matter. If there was going to be problems thereafter, just let her live. And she was also lighting candles all over the place. So a lot of praying going on. And it wouldn't surprise anyone that I survived, because here I am sitting in front of you. After 3 weeks, they discovered, or they found, or tried to let me function without some of these machines. And one by one, back at Paisley at this point, one by one, they tried switching the machines off just for a few minutes at a time, until they felt I was strong enough to be able to survive without them. And for what now, 6 weeks in total, I spent fighting for my life and trying to get rid of those machines. Doesn't sound long now, looking back in it, but I mean, that was a horrendously long time, with family coming up sort of 3 times a day and sitting by your bedside and travelling down to Leicester and things, and just a horrible, horrible time with them. But the doctors at that point, everybody in fact in the ICU unit, incredibly positive with me. Can't believe you've survived that, Corinne. We can't believe you've managed to come off that machine. You're some kind of Wonder Woman. You're incredible. You've worked miracles, and everything was so positive, and everybody was so kind and really pushing me hard. And I admit I'm a stubborn wee cow, so I think that had a lot to do with it as well. I was fighting. I had a 4-year-old son, Rory, and he obviously needed a mum. So I had that to fight for as well. And like I say, managed to survive the sepsis. But the downside of your body's so clever, obviously it's holding on to that oxygenated blood for the protection of your vital organs. But in doing so, my extremities were starved of oxygen. And the result of living and surviving was that my hands and my feet had started to go firstly purple, and then blue, and then black. And excuse me for the brutal picture. Hope you've not just had your lunch, but my hands were charcoal. They were solid black and clearly dead. My feet, that picture's a bit deceiving, but my feet were actually changing quite a lot. The colours were changing a lot. We had a lot of hope that we were going to be able to save the feet. And I was actually transferred to Glasgow Royal to see specialist surgeons who were going to test and treat and scan and all sorts of things to try and save my hands and my feet. My very first night in the Royal, you're put in a new room where I don't know everybody, and I've not got these wonderful doctors and ICU nurses telling me that I'm superb and telling me I'm a miracle worker. You're put into this new room and you know nobody. And the next morning, waking up to the doctor's rounds that you know come round at some ridiculous time in the morning, don't they? And they wake you up when you don't want to be awake. And there was about 10 of them that stood at the end of my bed, 10 people that I didn't know, and they were all discussing me. The only way you can tell them apart is that you know the uniforms at that point, and you tend to know who's in charge. And this consultant stood in front of me and he said, Miss Hutton's going to lose her hands and her feet. In 3 days' time, we're going to operate and amputate at the shins. We're going to remove her hands at the wrist, and here's the way we're going to do it. And I don't really remember anymore because I had only concentrated on this that sentence that said Miss Hutton's going to lose her hands and her feet, and that was news to me. That wasn't what I expected at all on my very first morning in the Royal with nobody around about me that I knew. And I think at that point I suffered my worst crash. I think the senior nurse had noticed and possibly had the same surprise news that I'd had. So when everyone left, you managed to keep it together, stiff upper lip and all that kind of thing, till everybody had left the room, and then I just collapsed. She immediately got onto my family, and within 20 minutes I had my mum, my dad, my brother all by my side, helping with this news and helping me to cope with it. And I felt so lost and vulnerable, and I just had no idea what to do. We got second opinions, we got third opinions, but it started to look like that actually was the way it was going to be. And I think it was probably on the 4th day after that I lost my legs at the shins exactly as was planned, and the hands at the wrists as well. I don't know if you picked up on Angela's message earlier, but you'll see that I'm not missing my hands. I'll come to that in a second. But I remember feeling utterly useless and utterly worthless, and just feeling like, what could I be to anyone? Could I be a mum? What could I be? Could I do my job? Who would I be of use to? Excuse me, got myself quite upset now. Excuse me. But at that point, I think, being the determined wee bism that I am, I realised that there was only 2 choices, and one of them was to give up, and that's not really me. The other choice was to embrace it, fight, find some kind of strength, and just accept that I was going to be different. Perhaps even use that difference. Maybe there would be doors opening as a result of it. I've got 2 brothers, both very, very pushy. And God, I got a lot of hard work at the time. If my older brother came into the ward after visiting at close, because he's that awkward, and he would come in sort of at 9 o'clock at night and he'd say, why have you got your pajamas on? Why are you not dressed? Why have you not got your lipstick on? What's wrong with you? You'd think, oh, for God's sake. He'd also say to me, have you noticed how mum and dad pick up on your mood? Have you noticed that if you're crying, then they leave crying? And if you're cheerful and chirpy, they leave chirpy and cheerful. And again, looking back, you think, what a huge amount of responsibility you put on me there. But probably, yeah, definitely, he knew my strengths, and he knew that I wouldn't want to do that. He knew that I would want to give other people hope, and probably knew that my way is perhaps to put that mask on it. And so I did. And the next day he would come in. Sorry, I've been a bit of a baby now. I haven't spoken about this for a while. The next day he'd come in and I would be in my clothes and I would have my lipstick on. Damn him. And I would try and be the best I could be, and I would try and be brave and try and push myself hard. And at that point, these are the challenges you face. I also found that there wasn't really anyone that could tell me what life was going to be like as an amputee. Nobody could tell me what I would be able to do. Would I be able to be a mum? Would I be able to look after my son? Would I be able to walk? Would I be able to drive? Would I be able to do all those fun things that you want to do as a mum with your kid? And I found there was nobody really that could explain it all to me. And I guess I noticed there was a bit of a gap there. And with my brother's help, we set up the charity Finding Your Feet. And my idea was that I would be the person that would tell others in that situation what it was like, what was available, what was not, what prosthetics were like, what amputation was like, what benefits were there, what support, what charities were there, and the answer at that point was none. And Finding Your Feet became so important to me. It started out being that peer support, just meeting people in hospital and giving them that information. Maybe I'd take them for a coffee, maybe I'd take them a wee gift. We became friends and started, socialising a bit together. And then I found that people offered, for example, the Pilates teacher offered to do Pilates with the amputees, and another offered to take us swimming and teach us to swim. And those offers started coming out, and we ended up having all these clubs and classes. And now with Find Your Feet, pre-lockdown, let's go there, we had about 60 clubs and classes a month throughout Scotland, offering everything from amputees, which was our version of a coffee morning. I'm far too young to have coffee mornings, so we had amputees. But we would also have fitness classes, yoga classes, swimming classes, climbing, skiing, all sorts of really active things, as well as some learning things. We had gardening, we had arts, crafts, everything, to try and cater for all different interests, but mostly to encourage people not to be isolated. We knew that isolation could be so serious that you could lose the will to live, and it does actually happen a lot. In the first 2 years following amputations, we know 50% of vascular patients, which are the majority of amputees, can lose the will to live. And our job is to give them meaning, and clubs, classes, social events, friends that can help them feel like they do matter. And I've got this little video that I think is probably quick to show you what Find Your Feet does pre-lockdown, shall we say. I'll tell you about our challenge in lockdown once I've put this on. So let me just show you our video. Sorry, I've skipped a picture. There's my amputations there and our video.
A quadruple amputee sportswoman and founder of the charity Finding Your Feet. Charity Finding Your Feet has turned your life around.
So it's Finding Your Feet, an amazing charity that supports and helps amputees.
So you've got your book, Finding Your Feet.
Finding Your Feet charity. Finding Your Feet. Finding Your Feet are doing great work for amputees and the families. We appreciate all that you do.
Choose not to life of imitation. This is constitute the reservation. These songs of his that you pay for. This part the feeling that you stay for. Good time, I want to be your best friend. Eastside love is listening on the west.
That's all right. Kick your legs, fella. You guys, let's wait for it. Alright. Don't stop because you're late, fella.
All for you. The world I love to change, I have to be part of the way it can stop. Come and tell me when it's time to kickstart the gold and generate love. Sweet talk the sound to intimidate her. Can't stop the cops from engineering. You're no need for any interfering. Your image in the dictionary. This life is more than ordinary. Can I get to maybe even 3 of these coming from a space to teach you what the beauties? Can't stop the spirit when I need you. This life is more than just a read through.
Hope you managed to see that video. Did you manage to hear the audio? I don't know if you were hearing the audio, but the one point where Dot, aged 80, her leg fell off in the climbing wall was quite a moment for us, and has produced a bit of a key line for Finding Your Feet, which was, don't stop because your leg fell off. That's kind of the way that we live and our motto. And I guess you can see from that there are challenges for lots and lots of people. We've now got thousands of members at Finding Your Feet, and this time last year we, along with everyone else, faced the big challenge where we were trying to encourage everybody out of isolation and out of depressions, if you like, to meet up. Suddenly, lockdown is what we're all told to do. So we had no choice but to go online just like everyone else. And I'm enormously proud of Finding Your Feet. In the first month, we were able to go even out doing our very first fundraiser online. Was a non-event where we sold tickets to people to come, or rather not come, to a non-event, to not come to that big charity dinner, not have to listen to my brother doing an auction, not have to sit and do small talk at a dinner table, not have to pay for your hair to be done, your nails to be done, not have to pay for a new dress. And we had people clambering over tickets, over whether they wanted the table at the front or the table at the back, whether they could only come for a sweet because they couldn't afford the whole meal. And we raised about £50,000 from that last March. And that was just incredible. And just showing that when those challenges are put your way, there's always a way around them. And I think we've probably all faced massive challenges this last year. But in actual fact, we face challenges all the time, don't we? We were out talking to schools, talking to kids that have got challenges because they look a bit different. At workplace, challenges because you act a bit different, challenges because your size is a bit different. For me, and embracing it, I decided to take up every single opportunity I could. And these next few slides are a wee bit of gloating, so I'm just going to skip through them because I'm aware of the time restrictions that I've got. But I took all these opportunities. And during lockdown, we managed to get 60 clubs a month online. 60 clubs a month, where we were doing clubs like everyone else was doing, which is quizzes and book clubs and amputees online. We had socials online. We've got all sorts of games online. We had speakers. We had tutors. We learned to do sign language. We're learning Spanish. We learned so many different things through lockdown. And again, you've got challenges to face, and you've just got to find a way around them. And I'm sure everybody listening today has challenges they face. God, I hope they're nothing like the challenges I faced, but nonetheless, they feel like it to you. They feel massive to you. I remember breaking my pinky 10 years ago and thinking it was a big deal. And now anyone that comes into me with a broken pinky, you know, you can kind of scoff at them and think, really, you poor soul, my heart's bleeding for you. Bit cheeky. You've got to have the dark humour. This picture here was a challenge that I pushed myself almost too far when I got to the top of Kilimanjaro 3 years ago, the very first female quadruple amputee to get there. So the problem with Finding Your Feet is that, yes, I am particularly pushy, as you've probably gathered. Yes, I'm stubborn, and I do push myself really hard. But a lot of our troopers, it's a challenge for them to get up in the morning. Their mountain is to get out the house and do something, and their challenge is to meet up, not least of all through lockdown. And we're starting to come out of this now. We're starting to have clubs next week. We're going to have some outdoor amputees where we're obviously limited with numbers, but we can get together and have a coffee outside. We can start the fishing club. We can start some kind of boot camp outside, maybe some yoga and some Pilates in the park. The bowling club up in Dundee is going to happen again. So we're bringing ourselves out of this just a little bit as you know, as best we can. But again, we're having to grasp these opportunities. We're having to reinvent ourselves all the time. And like Tom had said about the Rotary, it's about constantly changing. So many people are frightened of change, but I don't think we ever survive unless we're prepared to. You've got to. You've absolutely got to. And like Finding Your Feet and like the Rotary, we have to find things constantly that people want to join in with. If we get it wrong, they don't want to come. So we've got to reinvent ourselves all the time. We've got to try different things. We've got to think, what is it that people want? And we've got to constantly ask them those questions. What is it? We have a slight problem where the kids that we know, the amputee kids, love us. There's a lot of kids born without limbs. They love us. Their families love us. Their parents can get together and talk and know what they have to do to help their kids through these issues. They get to teenage years and they don't really want to be joining what is essentially a disabled club. So we're trying to reinvent ourselves now to think, what is it those kids do want? What would help them? Or rather, what would they want to help other people with? And one of the things that, again, you mentioned, Tom, was about volunteering. And obviously being a charity, we're very keen to encourage volunteering. But you'd mentioned about how volunteering is about giving back, and how you gain so much out of being a volunteer. But in actual fact, I would suggest, in my case, yes, I set up Finding Your Feet to try and help people and to try and inform people of what was available and to help them. But in actual fact, what I discovered was what it was doing for me. Now, this sounds incredibly selfish, and I would argue that, you know, that could even be what it is. But I quickly learned what this was doing for me. I quickly learned that this was almost the golden ticket, where people wanted to talk to somebody like me that had pushed themselves hard and learned. And that's where all those opportunities came. And I had a chance really to be able to be that change. I had a chance to be that voice for the amputees, and I got myself into Parliament and into Holyrood, and made myself a bit of a nuisance there, and made sure that they knew we were watching and we wanted change. Volunteering can really bring that as well. It can make you feel better. It can help a lot of mental health issues and a lot of well-being, because you matter. You're making the change for somebody and you really matter. Before I got my transplant, I looked into the organ donation register and discovered that I think it was something like 40% of Scottish people were on the organ donation register. But you have to remove anyone, for example, who's in a bad road traffic accident and their bodies are badly damaged. You have to remove the people that die in their sleep, and it's too late. You can't be an organ donor. There's so many illnesses that have to be removed. And when I get down to it, the 40% became very small single figures. So I started campaigning for organ donation. And now, of course, in Scotland, we've got the opt-out scheme, which is fantastic in that we don't need to ask the question anymore. But there are so many families that can change your view. And I would argue that you should still join the organ donation register. Please sign up, declare what you want to donate and what you don't, and sign that register. And more importantly, tell your family what you've decided so that they don't override your decision. It should be like your will, I think. It should be a legally binding decision that you give what you want to give. And thankfully for me, somebody very kindly donated their hands 2 years ago now, and I've got these beauties. After having lost my hands, I'm now able to do so much more for myself. I have a right hand that's 95% functioning when the target was 75. My left hand's a wee bit behind, but the first double hand transplant in Scotland, and didn't they do so well with me? I'm so, so proud to have them. I'm so, so grateful to one, the person who donated and was brave enough to sign the organ donation register, but also to the family that were brave enough not to overrule that. They were brave enough not to think about how that might mutilate somebody. It's a horrible, horrible decision to make. And I don't think it should be made at that time. I think it should be made way before. And then the families don't need to discuss it. They don't need to think about it. They can just move on and say, we'll get our loved one back soon. And for me, I hope that my donor family, I know in fact that my donor family are very, very proud of what she donated. I know they think that she lives on in quite a few different ways, not just my hands. They know how hard I push these hands and they know what I do with them. And I think they laugh at how much good they're going on to do. And for them, I'm sure it must be a bit of light in an otherwise very dark tunnel. And I'm so grateful to them for doing it. And I'm so grateful to have these hands now that are helping me go on to do more things with Finding Your Feet. So I think just to wrap up, I think the message has to be that there are challenges every single day of life. And it's not really about those challenges or what happens to you, but it's about how you're going to deal with them, what you're going to do about them, how you're going to be resilient, how are you going to bounce back from those challenges. And mentally helping other people in that situation is part of that recovery process, I think. So whatever it is, whatever hurdles you're encountering, perhaps if I think about other people, I know it really helps me to think there are people much worse off than me through lockdown, through COVID, through amputation. There's so much going on. I'll end on a funny story where we're starting, as I'd said, to come out now and get out and about and seeing people again. And I don't know if anyone had noticed, we got a lot of publicity yesterday from our first fundraiser, we're calling it, outside fundraiser, where during lockdown we started doing these clubs that I'd mentioned. Two gentlemen in particular, Des and Tony, became real great friends online, and they were doing all the clubs together. They started to be like a real double act where they were cheeky to each other, they were slagging each other, they were winding each other up, and they got to be real friends. And a year down the line, you completely forget that they'd never actually met. Both decided they wanted to do the kilt walk this weekend. And I'd said, well, wouldn't it be a laugh? They're both wheelchair bound, and they were going to do their kilt walk in the wheelchairs. And I said, well, wouldn't it be a laugh if we got together and managed to do a bit of a race? And yesterday we met. I have friends that own the Glasgow Tigers speedway track, and they let us use the speedway track. And Des and Tony met for the first time yesterday. We did the big reveal and we blindfolded them, despite the fact that they've seen each other on Zoom 3 times a week. You know, we did this big hamming it up real first time they'd met each other. And then we had a race round the speedway, and just to try and give you an image, I was standing there with my Nerf gun ready to start them off. I had the fire extinguisher in case there were sparks come off their electric wheelchairs, and we were totally winding. The two of them had been working out to build up the strength to push this little lever on their electric wheelchairs. So it became just hilarious, and that's what Finding Your Feet are all about. We're not the kind of charity that wants to stand and rattle tins and have people put their pennies in. We want you to see that what we do makes people feel alive, makes them feel relevant, makes them feel important, makes them feel part of the community, like the Rotary, and part of their message. We want a community of people that feel involved rather than the ones that feel less able, disabled, less important. And hopefully that's what we made Des and Tony do yesterday. And they got so much publicity, and they raised, I don't know, £1,200 or something for the kilt walk yesterday. And very kindly, Tom Hunter is putting in on top of that another 50%, maybe more, hopefully. And so they're so pleased with themselves that what they did was raise money for more clubs and classes, but more importantly, they spent the day laughing. They did something that had started out a bit of a joke, and we actually made it happen. And we do come up with these things that people want to do. We asked them what they wanted to do, and they did it. They feel like they're helping, they feel like they're volunteering, and they feel like they matter. So I think that gives you just about the rundown on Finding Your Feet, and there's lots of connections there to the Rotary. Rotary have been very good to us over the year in lots of different areas, have had me come in and speak, and there's a lot more I could have told you today, except for the time limit. But I'm really pleased to be given the chance to meet some people and talk to real people out there, even if it is virtually, and to tell you the story of Finding Your Feet. And I hope from there you pick up some of the messages about the challenges and how we cope with them, and the message of Finding Your Feet. I'm very grateful to you for listening. Thank you very much. I'm a little bit hoarse now, and I've run over my time. I'm very sorry.
Thank you, Cor. That's fantastic. Well,